No. And showtime. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Channel Pro 5-Minute Roundup. A look at news, trends, and tips for the SMB channel in 5 minutes or thereabouts. My name is Rich Freeman. I am executive editor of the Channel Pro Network, also a co-host of this program. I am joined this week, as I am every week, by your other co-host, Eric Simpson, a business transformation and improvement advisor to MSPs and other IT providers. Eric, looks like you are dressed for happy hour.
I am dressed for happy hour, Rich. Thanks for noticing. Yes, right after we get done with the 5 minute roundup today, I will be hosting another episode of the MSP happy hour today. So I am dressed appropriately to enjoy an adult beverage with all of our attendees today. Awesome.
Have you been thinking ahead to what specific adult beverage you're going to have?
Oh, yes. Today's MSP happy hour is featuring the MSP margarita. So if folks are ever interested to figure out what we're doing for MSP Happy Hour, you can go to msphappyhour.com or ericsimpson.com/MSP Happy Hour, and you'll see what the next happy hour is all about, what the featured drink. We did the Cyber Cosmo last month. We're doing the MSP Margarita today, and we've got a whole slew of drinks tailored to the MSP audience for the rest of the year.
Well, that sounds like a good time. I'm glad I asked.
Yeah.
But let's dive into our story of the week. And, normally in this slot, we would be talking about something out of the news. And what I decided to do for this show instead is focus some attention on a story that ran in the most recent issue of our monthly magazine and kind of get your input on. I'm just curious to get your reaction to this. And the inspiration for this story, back in December, I was exchanging some emails with an MSP who you and I both know named Joshua Lieberman. He is based in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and he let me know that he was one deal shy of his first $1 million year. And within a week of that email, he got that deal. So 2021 was his first $1 million year. And I was kind of thinking to myself, he has a pretty small team. $1 million, that's actually pretty good. And it got me wondering, well, what are, there are other people like that I know. I'll name another one. Stanley Lewison is an MSP on the East Coast. One-man band, solo shop. He's well into what's probably going to be his third consecutive $1 million year with no employees. What are the secrets that these people who have small teams but deliver big results have in common? And that's what this article kind of talked about. I'll just run through some of the things that they spoke about very quickly and then just kind of get your thought about this. So they all automate. They use every little bit of functionality in the RMM system they can to automate what they're doing for their clients. They're all into standardization, fewer products, platforms, vendors to work with. They outsource. They have to, right? So there are functions that they will perform themselves, but there are others that they outsource either to a vendor or a distributor or to another channel pro. All those models work there. And this is interesting because you figure small team, the only way that they're going to be generating a lot of revenue is if the owner of the business is closing tickets like the 1 or 2 or 3 technicians. But in a lot of these cases, these people delegate all that technical work to somebody else so that they can focus on the money making, the sales and marketing activities. And then last but not least, a lot of these companies I spoke to are kind of selective about who they have in their client base. So they either have a very particular profile for the kind of client that they want, or they are just very tough-minded about getting rid of the clients who are not making them a lot of money, who are wasteful, sucking up a lot of their time, or both of those things. So just a few of the characteristics that enable these companies with no employees, 1 tech, 2 tech, to have $1 million plus years. Eric, in your experience, is that consistent with what you see out there?
Boy, it reminds me of many chapters of my very first book. I wrote that guide to a successful managed services practice in 2006. This was all of the things, all of the mistakes that we made building our MSP practice before we eventually sold it at a good profit and employed those tactics. They've taken and simplified the process. What you said, Rich, I could only double down on. Standardization, automation, outsourcing when it makes sense, right? For the things that just the noise, right? To allow the team to do what only they can do is deliver high value services. And the one component that you mentioned that was shared among the folks that were interviewed for the article that I think a lot of MSPs kind of struggle to get to, the last little piece of the jigsaw puzzle, is to get that owner out of closing those tickets. That is work that should be done by billable technicians that they are billing for. And in the case where I see owners closing tickets, I always ask as I'm consulting with them, well, how many billable technicians do you have? And they never include themselves. And I say, well, are you closing tickets and managing projects? And they, oh yeah, I do that too. I go, well, are you tracking your time? Are you doing that? Yeah, not so much. I mean, and that's where you start eroding that profit margin and you start diffusing the focus and what that business owner should be doing. That's the whole point here, Rich, is to unencumber the leader from the noise in order to focus strategically on business growth and business growth strategies. And that, expands beyond simply sales. It bleeds into, looking at what the company valuation is, looking at reporting, looking at the metrics, and making sure that we're identifying things that are eroding our profit margins and adjusting those things. And another thing you said, Rich, that is very, very key is to begin to offload or exit those customers that don't meet a minimum profit margin target for clients. I mean, I'm guilty of this as well, Rich. In the day, it was like, well, they've been our client for X number of years. They're good people, yet they're our least profitable client, right? And we want to keep them because we're good people. Well, you know what? In our evolution as an MSP, we segmented our clients into 3 categories. We had our A clients, we had our B clients, and we had our C customers. And I learned this from a client of mine who ran an accounting practice. I may have told this story on the program before. And I asked him one day, Scott, what is your goal for your company? He said, I want to be the highest priced accounting firm in Orange County, California. And I did not expect that answer. And I said, well, how do you plan on doing that? He goes, well, every year I segment my clients A, B, and C, and my C customers, I sell to these other accountants. I sell those agreements, and then I go out after new A clients at a higher rate. And he did that consistently every single year, and a light bulb went off in my head. I went, wow, that's what we should be doing. So that's what we did. So, churning out lower profit clients, and even when you've hit your 60% profit margin target or whatever, can you do better? In my experience, yes, you can do better. The only thing keeping us from increasing our rates and commanding higher fees from prospects that don't know us is our thought process, our fear of no. And if we're able to position our value properly to new prospects, we can command higher rates. I've done it, and I've tested this with 3 consecutive new clients in the past where I've charged the first one a little bit higher than our normal fees, the next one even higher, and the third one even higher. And this all occurred within the same 30-day period, and they all said yes. So don't ask, don't get. Simplify, standardize, focus on the profitable clients, get that business leader out of the day-to-day service delivery as much as possible and focusing on strategic growth and sales and going through that, that client, evaluation process every year, and you'll hit very profitable revenues. And if you're partnered with the right strategic partners, outsourcing partners, vendors, etc., yeah, you can do much, much more with a smaller team than what, we may think we can.
And the only thing I'll add to that is, because the strategy role that the business owner or founder has to play is bigger than sales, as you were saying. But if you are somebody who really doesn't like sales, doesn't like marketing, doesn't really want to do it, and that's part of why you're closing tickets, because that's the thing you're best at and enjoy most, that's okay. hire somebody who can do that for you. Somebody's got to be kind of focused on that role, and it really shouldn't be you kind of squeezing it in when you can. Even if you've got a small team, there's got to be somebody who's really kind of focusing on growing the business, like you said.
That's spot on. I have a consulting client that I'm working with right now, and she loves doing the technical side of things. And so my strategy for her is to help find her someone that can be a COO and manage the day-to-day operations of the organization, and someone that can manage the sales, and let her do what she loves. And she loves the technical side of things, solution architecting and delivering that service. So yeah, there's a position for a leader in an organization, as long as they perceive what it's going to take to succeed, and bring in the resources that they need to do the things that they don't want to do or don't like to do.
So you, as you mentioned, you figured out a lot of the things that the people in this article I wrote figured out, and it enabled you eventually to sell your managed services business at a pretty good price. That actually ties into your tip of the week this week.
Absolutely, Rich. So the tip of the week is to understand the value of your organization. If you have an exit strategy that includes selling your organization, you've got to understand how the KPIs and the performance of your organization affect that valuation. So I'm going to share some data from Service Leadership. Every year they go out and they do a lot of analysis on what high performing MSPs are doing, and they look at their financials and they come up with these valuation metrics and things like that. So a tip of the hat to Paul and the team over there. The first thing that we're going to talk about is EBITDA. That is net profit. When you look at your yearly 2020, we're in 2022 now, so 2021, how did you end your year? What was your net profit? So what is that value? If your net profit, your EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, is less than 7.5% of total sales, then the multiple is around just shy of 7 times. And that multiple can increase. If it's 7.5 to 15%, then your multiple is around 8.35. And then if it's greater than 15%, you're probably looking at close to 9% of a multiple there. Now that is just the financial hard numbers. There are a lot of other things that can impact valuation, like where does your revenue come from? What percentage of it is recurring revenue, either monthly or annual recurring revenue? And people always ask, well, Eric, is it only managed service agreements? I say no. Recurring revenue is recurring revenue. If you're reselling renewals of licensing and subscriptions and warranties and all of that, that goes into that bucket. And in fact, those renewals are probably much more profitable than any managed service agreement you're delivering, because you're simply renewing something like a warranty and things like that, or a subscription. Your business model, is it, are you selling more cybersecurity? That's interesting. Are you selling even more niche type of services? Do you have specific vertical markets where you focus in on a line of business or a niche that maybe a more strategic buyer would look at your organization and say, oh wow, that's a vertical market that we want to get into? Or you have a solution or a specialization that they can add to their solution stack that makes you more attractive to them. So there's a lot of little drivers here. But really the first line you want to look at is that net profit. I mean, if you're increasing your net profit over time, year over year, then you're on the right track. And some of the things that we talked about that you've reflected in the article that we just discussed are the keys at the very core of what it takes to continue to grow valuation year over year.
So before I forget, I'll just point out that Paul that you referenced before is Paul Dipple. He's the head of service leadership. That was his business for many, many years. He still runs it. As of last year, I believe Service Leadership became part of ConnectWise, and you can find information about them online. They have a very deep database of information to validate the kind of thing you're talking about. And my key point there, Eric, is just that it is never too early to start looking at these numbers and to understand realistically how your business would be valued in the marketplace today. Because there's no set of stories about channel pros I hear that is more upsetting, sadder to me than the ones about somebody who is ready to exit and discovers only then that they had a misguided, maybe an inflated idea of what their business was actually going to be worth. The earlier you start thinking along these lines, even if you're years away from an exit, the more time you have to make any adjustments that you need to make to ensure that you get the money you want to get when exit comes around.
Yeah, and I'd also like to add one final thought here. I know personally many partners that were not ready to exit, but were forced to exit, to sell their companies because something happened in their life. Some, is a medical issue, something with family, and whatever the situation was, they ended up having to divest themselves of their company to go focus on this more important thing in their life at that moment in time. And sadly, because they weren't prepared, they weren't thinking this way, and tweaking and tuning and improving that valuation over time, when they did sell their companies, they certainly didn't realize the type of valuation that they would have liked to.
All right. So, folks, get on it. Will be time well spent. Trust us on this. And it leaves us with time for just one more story this week. Airports, they're noisy places. People live near them and will sometimes complain about the noise from the nearby airport. So it's not enormously shocking that the airport outside Dublin, Ireland, last year got 13,569 noise complaints. You would expect something like that to happen. What is a little bit surprising is that 90% of those 13,569 complaints came from one person. Now, they did the math on this. That comes out to 34 complaints a day on average, 365 days a year from one person who lives outside the airport. And man alive, if there's ever been a too much time on your hands kind of scenario, Eric, this has got to be it.
My goodness, I mean, if the intention of that person was to just be, as the number one, most annoying, individual for that airline, they're not just killing it, Rich. They are owning it. I mean, no one's ever going to break that record. I can't even imagine, how they even eat or, do anything. 34 complaints per day. Per day. I mean, they're doing better than most service desks at closing tickets a day.
Yeah, you got to, if nothing else, you got to admire the determination, because 34 complaints a day for a month would be impressive, but for 12 months, that's some real tenacity there.
Mm.
Well, folks, that is all the time we've got this week on the show for you. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be back next week with another episode for you. We are both a video and a podcast now. So if you happen to be watching us on video, but you like podcasts, go to Google, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and look for the ChannelPro 5-Minute Roundup. You will find us there. You can subscribe, you can rate, you can review. All of that will help us make the show a little bit more visible to other folks like you and help them benefit from it. If you're listening to the podcast now, but you're curious to see Eric's shirt, which you should definitely check out, you will find us on video as well on YouTube. And the easiest place to find us is on the ChannelPro Network channel there. You can become a subscriber to that as well. And if you click the little bell icon, you'll even get notified when the new episodes become available. You can find the article we were talking about small teams and big results, as well as daily news coverage, all sorts of additional information about how to grow your business at the ChannelProNetwork.com website. Every single day, we've got something new and valuable for you going up there. And if you want to learn more about Eric and the work he does with his clients, you should visit ErickSimpson.com. That is ERICK Simpson.com. So once again, we thank you very much for joining us on the show. We're going to see you again next week. Until then, folks, please enjoy the rest of your week. Eric and I are enjoying the rest of your week already.